Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? You know, my father's girlfriend shared with me this experience she had with him before he died, and they were up in like I think it was Maine or New Hampshire, and there was a piece of property that I think her grandfather had owned. They were going by it. She said, "Oh, you know, look at that! I grew up there," and she wanted to go check it out. There were some features of the property or what have you that she hadn't seen in a long time, and so she, had my father ask these people that bought it because it had been sold like two or three times. If they could go on there and just check, check out the land a little bit, and they were not receptive to people they did not know going traipsing about their land. So they get back in the car, and she said, my father turned to her and said, sometimes you just can't go back. And that reminds me of a discussion I had today with Runeslinger. We've been having this long, drawn-out conversation over quite some time, which it's slow, and we were only able to speak, due to schedules and the fact that we're across the world from each other, just a little bit, but every given day. But I was relaying some experiences I've had lately, as I've been thinking about and examining some Powered by the Apocalypse games, which this video has nothing to do with that at all, as a matter of fact. But realizing that some of my conceptions about those games have changed, and that some experiences, some revelations I've had about them, like very recently, reminded me of like just how much I've kind of fallen into this mindset of like I want to know more. Like when I'm playing a game, and I have a reaction, I like, why did I have that reaction? Why did this feel this way? Why do I prefer this? Why did that guy just do that? Why did this group of people gel together? Why are we having this clash here? Why did it, what is it about this game and these mechanics that's creating this feeling, etc. Really fascinating stuff. And the other part of that is that when I have some other experiences, like I played some basic fantasy role-playing game one-shots very recently, back to back, and they were great fun. I'm not knocking them. They were one-shots. They were pickup games. They were with people that like I didn't know everybody in the game entirely, and I was quipping to Anthony that it was interesting because I was able to kind of float above myself as an observer. Like I'm playing the game, I'm interacting with the game, but at the same time, I'm observing my reactions to everything. I'm observing like how how the other players are interacting, kind of sussing out what their intentions are, and seeing like where we might have a clash of intentions, where like in some areas we might not gel, or we might be looking for different things. The whole nature of a one shot, the whole nature of just like a pickup game in general, that sort of thing. And he asked me like what other what kind of observations did I have, and I talked about like a lot of things like I just mentioned, but also that I had run into a few times some frustration, or I could see more clearly some of the limitations of things like class and level, and some of the limitations of the mechanics. And don't worry, I'm not about to like renounce the OSR and never play Lamentations of the Flame Princess and all my OSR games ever again. I still love that, but I'm able to see clearly, or more clearly now, like them for what they are, some of the limitations they have, and more importantly, though, is some of my own preferences. When I played for the first time with groups of people where we all played in a very, what I didn't realize at the time was a very, right to dream simulationist manner, where we were all playing our characters as if the world was real, as if our characters were real, and what would these characters really do in these situations. It was great. And when I played, in other games where we weren't doing that, or there was this, various clash of what people wanted, it did not feel as good. It was not as fun. And it took me a long time to get the vocabulary to be able to express myself and to realize what I was experiencing. Once I realized that, I was able to see it clearer. And I've had some great experiences. The Lamentations in Prussia game, just as a game master, watching those three guys play in that really immersed manner has been awesome. And likewise playing in All for One Regime Diabolique, our Lights and Darkness campaign, some other games I played where it's doing it for me, and I'm able to sit back and think, well, why did this just happen? Even just in our experiences in the Veil, it's been really cool to see some of the things that have happened there, what's worked for me, what's a challenge to my thinking, etc. But at some point I realized that. With the limitations of things like class and level, he asked, well, is this kind of like you can't go home anymore? Because I've experienced, other games. I've experienced what it feels like in games like Ubiquity, where you start out at you don't have the limitations might be the wrong word, but you don't have the level experience. And I've talked about in several videos the idea that there is this sweet spot. Lots of people talk about this in, like, the old school games or whatever, or level-based games, where somewhere in the middle, you're not, you're more competent, you're not fragile. The character concept has kind of come together more in terms of what is this person really like. It's less. It doesn't matter if it's a class or an archetype or whatever, just a person you put together like a concept. But they are more of that concept at that point. But they're not a caricature of that concept. They're not. Their abilities and what have you aren't just grandiose and ridiculous. And there are games that there were times, like when we were playing the Lamentations in Prussia game, even times of playing these one-shots where I wished that those character concepts were more together. That we weren't limited by using something like levels, and where it was a different experience. And so I'm not knocking OSR, I'm not knocking the class level thing, but I could see more where my preferences have expanded, and how I realize that there's times when I like something a little bit different. And so it's interesting. This this is not a video of like great revelations, but just kind of getting to know myself better, getting to know challenging my thinking, and having some new experiences, and taking away, like, geez, what do I like the best, or what's my most comfortable spot in a game, and or if I'm playing in a different in two different games, what's the difference in feeling, what's the difference in what's the takeaways. Very interesting stuff. So, I'm not sure where I'm going with all this, but I figured I'd just kind of share it and drop it out there. So, how about that? The end.